Last week, the journal Science published a study by Vanderbilt University Medical Center. It advocates for the creation, get this, of a universal, nationwide DNA database, including you and me and everybody else. The study advocates for the United States to also join the ranks of the UK, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, all countries that have been fiddling with this idea of creating this type of super system with genetic information from every and all societies. This study also submits that building this universal DNA database, you know, that swab thing that they send you that we've all done or sometimes police ask you to do, would actually result in more privacy. Now, if to you that sounds counterintuitive, you're certainly not alone, because maybe what we should be asking is, where is that swab I gave for my DNA test going? Who has it? What are they doing with it? Who are they sharing it with? All right, here to break this down now is NRS correspondent Michele Greenstein, who joins us. Boy, I find this to be just a fascinating topic. So help me understand what the case is that they're trying to make for why we should do this, and privacy?
Sure. So the main argument here is that law enforcement already has access to such a large segment of the population that we may as well centralize it. So they say this move is not that dramatic. We're simply formalizing what the government already has access to. You may remember that in the case of the Golden State Killer, law enforcement was able to use GED Match, a site that encourages consumers to upload their own genetic information to find out more about their family tree. Now, cops pretended to be the donor of what was actually crime scene data, and the government justified this. They said, look, GED Match is advertised as a publicly accessible database. It doesn't specifically ban deception. But it's not just publicly accessible databases. The government can also access these direct-to-consumer private databases. In most jurisdictions, both in the U.S. and in the world, a subpoena is the only thing that the government needs to make a company tell them whether or not there's a genetic match. And as you know, a subpoena only requires that the information is relevant to a case. So it's much easier than getting a warrant based on probable cause. Also, in the case of healthcare providers, a subpoena is also the only thing necessary. That's thanks to the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Our viewers may know that as HIPAA. Now, when it comes to research, studies show that individuals are reluctant to give over their genetic information because they fear the government may have access to it. So this study that you just mentioned argues that by getting rid of the need for a third-party database, we're actually helping science. And it also argues that it would be less discriminatory. This universal database would be less discriminatory because right now the government only has access to the DNA of those who have been arrested for felonies, convicted for felonies, in some cases people who have just been stopped in connection with a crime, who have not actually been arrested. So the resulting databases are skewed towards populations more likely to be policed.
Okay, I get all of that, but here's the problem. When person X or Y decides that because his wife, as in my case, gave him this present for Christmas, and he gets to do this swab.
Right, like 23andMe or
yeah,
Ancestry,
exactly,
right.
To find out who my ancestors are, which is interesting stuff, by the way. When I do that, I am not telling the world, I am not telling the FBI, oh, by the way, when I did this, this means inherently that now you have permission to put me in your file. That, as an American who treasures his privacy, that bothers me a little bit.
Sure, and what the study says, basically, this isn't made explicit, but the underlying argument here is if you've done nothing wrong, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. The same argument that's used to justify other forms of government surveillance and control. But this argument makes like some big assumptions. Like you say, one is that the government's only going to use this information for its stated purpose to prevent crime. And the other is that the government is competent enough to protect this information.
Yeah, it comes down to the old Big Brother thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm particularly keen on the question of health care because, as you mentioned, a HIPAA violation is a very big deal, and it's something that we still very much protect in this country. But let us give you examples. Let us consider something like Humana, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna. These are giant, powerful companies.
Profit-driven companies,
Boy, wouldn't they love to get their hands on the DNA of anybody who is asking to be insured by them.
Right.
And I bet you there's a possibility that they may want to use that to say, I'm sorry, Michele Greenstein, I'm not going to insure you because you have a propensity toward cancer.
Yeah, there is a serious potential for abuse here. And I guess the question is, do we want that kind of control to be so centralized?
But at the same time, the idea of having a central database is a good one. What's not so good is who's going to be able to keep it honestly. And who's not going to use it to invade my privacy.
So,
it's classic.
So the argument is, look, all this information's already out there. We might as well centralize, formalize, and regulate it. But who's going to regulate that? The same government that partners with profit-driven insurance companies to prevent people from getting healthcare.
It's a great conversation. I'm glad you looked into it for us.
Yeah,
as usual.
It should be a public debate.
Well done.
Thank you.
And happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
All right.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.